Well, hello, my friend, and welcome back to Catching Your Breath, the podcast. I'm your host, Steve Austin, and this is episode 34. Hey, I've missed you. It's been a month. Holy cow. Life has happened. Life has happened. Wow. Yeah, let me say it one more time. Life has happened. And it's so good. It's so beautiful. And it's so busy. So I am in the process of pitching a couple of different books. Because what's crazier than trying to write one new book? Trying to write two. So what the heck? Here we go. So more information coming on that really soon. I should know some more definites and then be able to share more information with you in the next month. So yeah, that's huge. Second news, the podcast is going monthly. I tried very hard to do weekly, and I just can't do it. I am too busy, and it's wonderful, but I'm just too busy to try to do a podcast once a week. So I hope you love me enough to hang around once a month, because that's what we're going to do. I'm also transitioning the newsletter to once a month. So if you've been a weekly reader of the newsletter for all these years, I'm transitioning to once a month. So the newsletter will come out on, the podcast will come out the first Tuesday of every month. The newsletter will come out the second Tuesday of every month. And I'm releasing a new free mental health resource the third Tuesday of every month. So you got something coming out every single week. It's just not all the things anymore. And the final big news, a little bit of bittersweet big news, is that I'm ending the blog. Oh, can we all just hold hands for a minute? Yeah, I'm closing down. I have closed down the blog. You know, I have written almost every week for the last 10 years. And it's been wonderful. And it is how I got my start into all of this. The speaking, the podcasting, the books, all of it. But it's time. All good things must come to an end at some point, right, friends? So, if you just absolutely love the blog, I would strongly encourage you to go sign up at patreon.com/IamSteveAustin. And one of the tiers of support there includes a favorite blog archive sent right to you once a month. So if you just love the blog and you can't believe it, oh my God, Steve, what are you doing? Then go sign up at patreon.com/IamSteveAustin. So look, this intro is a little bit longer than most, and I appreciate you being patient with me, but hey, it's been a month, and so that's how it's going to be. There's going to be lots of announcements, but it's all good stuff. Look, if you're new around here, I want to make sure you know where to go and how to connect. So my website is catchingyourbreath.com. That's catchingyourbreath.com, just like the title of my last book. And if you go to catchingyourbreath.com, when you land on the home page, you're going to see across the top of the screen, Start Here. When you click on Start Here, it's going to take you to a place where you can sign up for a couple of really cool downloads. One is my first book, From Pastor to a Psych Ward. And when you sign up for that free download, then you're also going to get 7 days of email content. It's my mental health getting started guide. So there's my depression safety worksheet. There's my anxiety worksheet. There's journals and all sorts of other good content when you sign up. The other option that you have is signing up for my 10-day Love Your Life challenge. So it's 5 days of self-esteem, 5 days of self-care, right to your inbox. Both of those are free, and you get them by going to catchingyourbreath.com and clicking on Start Here at the top of the page. I also just released a new video that includes me playing a little piano and singing in the background, but it's on my YouTube channel, which you can also get to by going to Catching Your Breath. You'll see the icon for YouTube right there at the top of the screen. And the new video is called In the Midst of Suicide, God is Faithful. I'd love for you to check it out. I'd be honored for you to share this video on social media. And Yeah, so there's that. The website's brand new, by the way. I have just completely redesigned the whole website. There's some really great pictures there from my buddy Devin Bowram, who is just a brilliant photographer, and he travels all over the place doing great photos. So if you're looking for just a brilliant, beautiful, magical photographer who travels, then go to facebook.com/Devin Bowram, Balram photo. He's my friend. A couple of other things. I want to thank you for these new reviews on Apple Podcast. So the first one is from Dig for the Gold. I feel like I'm picking my nose here. Dig for the Gold. Steve helps me in my inner world. He asks great questions that give me clarity, and I feel encouraged each time I listen. Thank you, Steve. No, thank you, friend. The other one is from Jay Turney, who says, Steve has a great balance of truth, rawness, and laughter. It is a pleasure to listen to his podcast. It's one of the highlights of my week. That's really kind. I love his willingness to dig deeper into these hard questions, and it's my pleasure to join him on this ride. Well, welcome along. Please keep your arms and legs inside the entire ride. All right, look, I'm just really glad you're here. There's all sorts of other stuff that you can dig around and find there at catchingyourbreath.com, like a free mental health resource every month. The shop is there. The books are there. My courses are there. Coaching is there. One final thing I'll mention. If you go to Patreon, which I've already given you the site, but I'm going to give it to you one more time. It's patreon.com/IamSteveAustin. You will see that there are some coaching calls I have opened up. So if you want to go a little higher than there's $1 a month support, $5, $10, $15. If you want to go a little higher and do $50 a month support, then you get a Catching Your Breath call every month. So it's a private one-on-one call with me for half an hour every month to talk about anything that's meaningful to you, whether it's coaching or spiritual direction or just something as low-key as two friends getting together to catch up over coffee. If you are looking for someone to keep you accountable on your next big project, or you're just wanting to connect with a guy who has the heart of a pastor, who's actively going to listen to whatever is going on in your life or your mind, then these conversations are perfect for you. So you can get all of that, plus all the other levels, by going to patreon.com/IamSteveAustin. All right, look, this conversation that we're about to have is actually a talk I gave recently at Unity of Birmingham, and it's all about how growth begins with acceptance. I'm so glad you're here. Here we go. So I want to talk about Jonah, and I'm going to read you just a smidge of it. I like the Message Bible. If you're a King Jameser or something else, bear with me. But here's what it says in the Message. Then Jonah prayed to his God from the belly of the fish. He prayed, in trouble, deep trouble, I prayed to God, and he answered me. From the belly of the grave I cried, help! You heard my cry. You threw me into ocean's depths, into a watery grave. With ocean waves, ocean breakers crashing over me, I said, I've been thrown away, thrown out of your sight. I'll never again lay eyes on your holy temple. Ocean gripped me by the throat. The ancient abyss grabbed me and held me tight. My head was all tangled in seaweed at the bottom of the sea where the mountains take root. I was as far down as a body can go, and the gates were slamming shut behind me forever. Yet you pulled me up from that grave alive, O God, my God. When my life was slipping away, I remembered God, and my prayer got through to you, made it all the way to your holy temple. Can you do me the biggest favor ever and go get me a copy of Catching Your Breath? I knew I left something. Just grab it off the back table. Thanks. So, the question in the bio is, what if this is not a book about a guy and a big fish? What if this is a story about radical acceptance? Radical awareness of where we are right now. What if that's what this story is all about. I just wonder what would have happened if Jonah had refused to accept the fact that he was in the belly of a fish. Thank you. That he was in the belly of a fish. What if Jonah had said, "Nah, I don't buy it. I'm manifesting my way out of here." Good luck, right? So I want to read you a little story from Catching Your Breath as soon as I get to it. One of my favorite stories. My buddy Andy, about 25 years ago, got a call one Friday night. Phone rang, and it was his grandpa. And his grandpa said, "Hey, why don't you pack your bags and come on over to mine and Grandma's house? I got a surprise for you." All right, so that's where this story begins. Andy swears he knew what it was right away. He begged his grandpa to take him fishing for months. All he could think about was how much fun they'd have in that old flat-bottom boat and how many fish they'd catch. Sure enough, fishing was the plan. Andy could hardly get to sleep, and he was bouncing like Tigger the next morning. Grandpa snuck in and placed a finger on his mouth and said, "Shh, Grandma's still asleep. Don't want to wake the bear." When they got to the lake, Andy helped his grandpa load up the boat. By the time they were done, there wasn't much room for them. There were 2 fishing poles, a jug of water, a lunchbox, an ice cooler, and a beat-up coloring book and crayons Grandma had packed, just in case little Andy became bored. There was also a coffee can full of dirt and worms, a net to bring in the catch, a battery-powered radio, sunscreen, life jackets, 2 paddles, a trolling motor, Grandpa's wide-brim hat, and the 2 of them. The boat, to say the least, was pretty full. Andy was wide-eyed with adventure and possibility as Grandpa pushed them away from the dock. It was sure to be a perfect day, judging by the cool of the morning and the fog on the water. Pretty soon, something else had caught his attention. Grandpa turned off the motor and turned to see what Andy was giggling about. "Look, Grandpa," he said as he splashed in the water in the back of the boat. Grandpa yelled, "Oh no! Tell me I didn't forget the drain plug." The water kept climbing, and Andy was getting scared. Grandpa dumped the worms out of the coffee can and frantically started scooping water from around their feet. It was too late. The little trolling motor wouldn't crank. Grandpa swore under his breath, grabbed a paddle, and paddled hard and fast, desperate to get his grandson to safety. But the weight was slowing them down. "Throw everything over, Andy." Grandpa stopped paddling long enough to grab the cooler and throw it in the water as Andy chucked everything he could reach. But the water kept rising. It was too late. "Come on, we gotta swim." It's my buddy's favorite story. Now a father with kids of his own, Andy looks back with a deep belly laugh and a little tear in his eye at the day he and his grandpa sank the old flat-bottom boat. But we made it back. Nothing hurt but Grandpa's pride. So, what if Grandpa had said, "Nah, we're not going down. I've got faith. It's going to save us. And the water's rising, and it's getting to his knees, and it's getting to his thighs, and we're going down." So, today we're talking about how growth begins with acceptance. But what's the difference between acceptance and agreement? So we'll get there in a minute. So, another story that I love from the Old Testament, Elijah and the broom tree. Anybody familiar with that story? Elijah, the prophet, the man of God, man of faith, seen all these miracles. He's worn slap out. I'm pretty sure that's what it says in King James. Worn slap out. And he comes to a broom tree and he lays down and he says, "God, would you just let me die?" You think the Bible doesn't talk about mental health. I have to have another conversation. But he's so exhausted, he lays down and says, "God, would you just let me die?" Now, I love this story because it talks about the spirituality of snacks and naps, right? So he lays down by this tree and God sends angels to feed him for the next few days, and he sleeps. And it's amazing what happens when he wakes up and he says, I think I can go on. I think I've got what I need to go a little bit further in the journey. But first he had to accept where he was. The kids have kept me up all night. Maybe that's somebody else, certainly not me. The kids have kept me up all night, right? Or we've had the emergency and we've been at the hospital. Or I'm stressed to the max about finances and I haven't slept in a week. I have to acknowledge where I am before I can ever move forward, before I can ever grow from it. What about Jesus and the woman at the well? One of my favorite stories in the whole book. The longest recorded conversation Jesus has with anybody in the whole book, and it's with a woman. Oh, scandal of all scandals. And a woman he's not even supposed to be talking to. Jesus had to acknowledge that it's hot in the Middle East in the summertime, and I'm thirsty, and I'm sweating, and I'm dehydrated, and I don't know this strange woman, but she's got access to the well, and I sure could use a drink of water. And we know he goes on to offer her a different kind of water. But Jesus, who was fully human, I think we forget that so often, needed a drink. He had to acknowledge his own thirst. And as he acknowledges that and becomes vulnerable, it opens up a whole new opportunity for this woman to be vulnerable and find healing. You've been married 5 times and the man you're with now is not your husband. And she accepts it. And her life begins to change. And she goes out and says, oh, you got to come meet this man who told me everything I've ever done, right? But it's because that door was first opened to say, this is where I am. Here's the vulnerability. Here's the, oh my gosh, what's the song, Don't Leave the Good Parts Out? Andy Grammer. So Lindsay is a crazy big Andy Grammer fan, and he sings this song, tell me your story, but don't leave the good parts out. Show me where it hurts, right? Give me something real. Lead me to the parts of you that never really heal. That's what we're talking about today. You've got to accept where you are before you can move forward. And that kind of radical acceptance it's contagious. It changes us and in turn changes other people. A couple of other stories. We see Jesus accepting the fact that he is overwhelmed by the crowds. And he walks away. He gets away from the crowd. Love them. They're really needy today. And I got to walk away and take a break. Because if I don't get apart, I'm going to come apart, right? I'm going to fall apart. So we see again that very human side of Jesus. Another really human side of Jesus. He's worn out again from the crowds. And he gets down the bottom of a boat and takes a nap. I'm going to make shirts. Jesus took naps. It's happening. Get ready. Everybody's going to want one. The prodigal son. The prodigal son's in the pigsty. He's squandered all his money. His inheritance is shot, He's at the end of his rope, and he has to first acknowledge, here I am eating from the trough with the pigs, before he can ever come to the realization that all I ever really want is just to be home, where I belong. Where I can just be me. No more of this performing. No more of this trying to fill this void that will never be filled. I've got to acknowledge where I am before I can get to where I want to go. So you go to the mall. At least back in the day. Maybe they've still got these. It's probably a screen now. But they used to have the great big map, right, of all the different stores. I'm thinking about the Galleria. All the different stores around the Galleria. And that's all wonderful unless you don't know where you are to begin with. So you've got the big gold star. You are here, right? Well, you got to know where you are to get to where you want to go. If your GPS can't connect with your signal in your car and know your current location, it can't take you to the next destination. So we've got to accept where we are if we ever want to grow. So, what happens when you've not been disobedient like Jonah, but you've been obedient, you've followed God, you've read and prayed and gathered, and you've done all the right things, and life still seems to fall apart? We got to read this again. From the belly of the fish, Jonah prayed to God. In deep trouble, God answered me. From the belly of the grave, I cried, help! I need somebody. Help, right? And I think it's the most beautiful prayer, the most powerful prayer, the most eloquent prayer in the whole world. Help! Help me. Help me now. I can't do this on my own. I'm at the end of myself. I need God. Whether you picture God as this old man with a long white beard sitting in a rocking chair on the front porch of heaven, or like right here inside of us, whatever your theology is, when you come to the end of yourself, and then you remember, I love it says at the end, when my life was slipping away, I remembered God. Oh yeah, there's that whole God thing I can tap into. There's that energy, there's that strength, there's that hope, there's that possibility for healing and miracles. But it doesn't usually happen until I come to the end of myself and accept that. So, a couple of verses later, the message says the fish vomited Jonah up on dry land. That's a beautiful picture. Just yerped him right up on the beach. So, we've talked about acceptance. Pretty clear, I think, I hope. But what about the difference in acceptance and agreement? So, Jonah's in the belly of the fish. Can't really argue with that. It stinks down here. There's rotting fish. I'm clear on where I am, but I don't like it. I don't agree with it. So, I'm praying, God, help. Right? Maybe you get the diagnosis that you don't like, and you have to accept it, but you don't have to agree with it. So I accept cancer, but I don't agree with it, so I'm going to take the chemo. I'm going to keep praying for a miracle, and I'm going to go to the doctor, and I'm going to change my diet. I look at the scale every morning, and I don't really like the number I see. I have to accept it because I can't argue with it, but I don't agree with it, so I'm going to walk an hour every morning before I go to work. So there's a difference in accepting where you are and agreeing with, this is just my lot in life. So I have a depression diagnosis, anxiety, PTSD. Those are very real medical diagnoses. My brain is not quite wired like everybody else's in the whole world. I accept that. But I am more than my diagnosis. My diagnosis is not the end of me. It's actually the beginning of where God can come in and do some pretty amazing things. And it starts with incredible conversation with people just like you. This is fun, but what I love is when this is over and we go out there in the foyer and we talk and you share your story and where you've been and what you're learning, where you find hope. So I think that when we reach the end of ourselves and we're willing to say, I can't do this, and we invite other people into that, and we find God there, right, at the end of the rope with us. I think it's Psalm 139 that says, even if I make my bed in hell, you are there. So we find this God who doesn't always snap his cosmic fingers and take away our suffering. We don't always magically get healed of I keep saying cancer, or depression, or whatever it is, fill in the blank. But if we find a God who is present with us, most often showing up in each other, oh man, I can make it another day. If I accept where I am, I admit that I'm not okay, I ask help, or I ask help, and God shows up or God shows up, either way, I can keep going. Kind of got off on a little tangent here. I accept the state of American politics, but it looks like a freak show, so I don't agree with it. So what am I going to do? I'm going to vote. I might get out and march. I might protest, hopefully from a place of love, but I don't agree with what's going on here. I accept this is where we are today, but I don't agree with this for my children. I don't agree with this for my grandchildren. So I'm going to do something about it. And so it's almost this intersection of our humanity meeting that cosmic Christ that Richard Rohr talks about, and we find God in the midst of the mess, the humanity, right where we are. And amazing things can happen. Oh my gosh. So, I was in ICU for 3 days, numb from the waist down. If you've heard me speak, you probably know this bit of my story. I've been serving as a pastor, reached the end of my rope, can tell you what the bottom of the barrel looks like. And there I am in ICU, doctors trying to figure out if my liver's going to make it. It does. Here I am, 7 years later. Thank you, God. And the nurse is rolling me down the hall from ICU down to the elevator. And we get in the elevator, and she presses B for basement, or maybe belly of the whale. And we go down in the belly of the hospital, and she rolls me down this longer, darker hallway. And there's that gray sign with the arrow, psych ward. The belly of the hospital. And she rolls me through, and those giant brown metal doors clang shut behind me. Jonah says the gates clanged shut. For me, it was those big, giant brown metal doors that clanged shut. And all I could pray in that moment, all that theology went out the window, and all I could pray is, God, if you're there, I could really use some help right now. So at the end of myself. And I accept that I'm rolling into this psych ward, but I don't want this to be the rest of my life. So my wife said when we got home, we're sitting on the couch, and Lindsay said, I don't think the worst day of your life gets to define the rest of your life unless you let it. You can let it. You can try to die again. You can just live in this victim mentality and think that this is it and I am depression. No, I don't agree with that. But I accept that there are things if I have high cholesterol, okay, well, you know what? I need to change my diet, or I'm going to have to take a little Lipitor. It just is, because we're humans. But it doesn't negate the power of God. I think it even makes God more compassionate, more present with us right there at the intersection of, this is the end of me and it's the beginning of you. And if you could just come be present with me in the belly of the whale, whatever that is for you, in the belly of the whale, I think I can make it another day. And I think the most beautiful part of this, okay, so here's Jonah, totally disobedient, according to the story, whatever you think about the story. Here's this guy, completely disobedient, running in the other direction, ends up jumping off a boat to save the crew because it's all his fault, swallowed by a fish. This is the end. And then the grace of God shows up, and he does vomit him out on a beach where he was supposed to be. He's running the other direction, and the whale spits him out on the shoreline in Nineveh. That's the grace of God. To me, that's the grace of God, that we all get another chance. That when we're willing to accept that I can't do this on my own, but God, could you help me? Friend, could you help me? Jamie, could you help me? And God shows up. Wow. So there I am, belly of the whale in the hospital. And I slept a whole lot. And the nurses showed up and fed me. And I sort of felt like Elijah at the broom tree. I just wanted to die. But the spirituality of a nap, the spirituality of some good snacks, talking to other people at the end of their rope, coming together with a shared need and a shared hope, right? I'm at the end of my rope. I hope this isn't the end of my rope. I believe things can get better, and I'm willing to say I'm not okay. What if the church looked more like a psych ward? Parking lot might be packed. I don't know. So, all that to say, been to hell and back. I can tell you what the belly of the fish smells like, and it's not pretty. It's dark and damp and cold and scary as all get out. But accepting where you are while refusing to stay there and asking for help from God, from God's children, makes all the difference in the world. I think that's where we find salvation. If there's such a thing as salvation, I think that's it. So, I wrote a little mantra for us today. Meditation might feel a smidge different, but I want to sort of wrap up this way. So if you will, do whatever you need to do to get comfortable. I like my feet on the floor. I like my hands in my lap. I like to close my eyes. You do whatever it is you need to do to get grounded and centered. Thank you, God, for another day. Thank you for hope and friendship, the strength to admit that we're weak. continue to meet with us here. Whether we're on the top of the mountain or the belly of the whale, you are there because you reside right here in each of us. So let's breathe together. Big breath in. Exhale all that stress, all that anxiety. I'm going to breathe in again. And exhale all that fear, all those things you can't control. Breathe in again, life. Breathe it out. Growth begins with acceptance. Refusing to dwell on things beyond my control allows me to move on. I practice acceptance so I can grow. Hardship and losses are a natural part of life. Even when I'm sad and disappointed, I can find something in any situation that I can use to my benefit. I treat myself with compassion, and I take constructive action. Let's breathe together again. We'll breathe in and breathe out. I put things in perspective. Most conditions are temporary. When I think about the challenges I've overcome in the past, I build my confidence for dealing with whatever I face today. I search for solutions. I focus on what I can do to enhance my situation. I change my attitude by looking on the bright side and counting my blessings. I remember that struggling can make me stronger. When I'm ill, I learn more about my condition. I search for strategies that will help me recover or manage my symptoms. I use home remedies. I talk with my doctor. I engage in life-giving activities that help me take my mind off of my discomfort. I remember to breathe. When I have conflicts at work, I try to see events from my coworkers' point of view while standing up for my own values. Today, I accept the truth that even when it is difficult, facing facts instead of fighting them helps me be productive and peaceful. Let's take a moment and enjoy the silence and just breathe into this moment. And there you have it, friend, my conversation at Unity of Birmingham from just a couple of weeks ago. Hey, as a bonus, I mentioned in the beginning of this episode that I recently created a new video and recorded a new song, and I want to share that song with you right here. So it's a cover of a worship song from Elevation Worship called Faithful. And if you want to view the whole video, which is a good bit about my story of recovering from a suicide attempt and finding God in the midst of despair, then you can go follow and subscribe to my YouTube channel. But here's the song. It's Faithful by Elevation Worship, and I'll let this close us out. I'll see you in a month.
When I felt like the burden was more than I could hold, when the whispers of worry overwhelmed my soul, you never left me alone. You were there all along. You are faithful, so why should my heart be afraid? You are faithful, and I know you're not gonna change. You are faithful, I was down to the wire, hoping you'd come through. Then you stepped in the fire like you always do. You are faithful. Why should my heart be afraid? You are faithful, and I know you're not gonna change. You are faithful. Father, how great, great is your faithfulness. And oh, God, my Father, how great, great is your faithfulness. And oh, God, my Father, how great, great is your faithfulness. And oh, God, my Father, how great, great is your faithfulness. You are faithful. Why should my heart be afraid? You are faithful, and I know you're not gonna change. You are faithful. Why should my heart be afraid? You are faithful, and I know you're not gonna change.